fellow readers. Today I'm going to be talking about a very steamy subject because there's been a lot of controversy recently with sex in YA. Now, I watched this video by Francina Simone and it centers particularly around A Court of Thorns and Roses and its sequel, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Now, this book series, I'm going to do a quick disclaimer, I have not read it. So I am going to take this topic as a whole instead of just focusing on this story at hand because I need to actually read the series before I form my own opinions about it. Now, Francina's video is very controversial in a lot of things that she brought up. I had a lot of my friends and family members watch the video, and some of them were really happy watching it, others were really frustrated or annoyed by what was being said, but she came up with a lot of amazing points that I felt the need to discuss. The first topic I would love to discuss actually does center around this book, The Court of Thorns and Roses, and its sequel, because Sarah J. Maas has gone publicly to state that this book is new adult. And that is why Francina makes the point that in the first 22 pages of A Court of Mist and Fury, there is a sex scene. Now, the publishing company has released it as a young adult, and that sparks a lot of questions. A lot of it is, did Sarah J. Maas actually state that it's new adult trying to cover her own ass because of all the parents that are angry with 13, 14-year-olds reading sex? Or did she really want it to be released as new adult and the publishing company went behind her back? Now, if the publishing company went behind her back, she definitely should file a complaint and look for a new publisher because that is definitely wrong, and the publishing company should always listen to the author's ideas and demands and not go behind their backs and do something that is completely inconsiderate. Now, if it is in a way to cover her own ass, well, that's just something authors have to do sometimes because, you know, sometimes they write something that they feel needs to be in a book, but people are gonna get mad, especially parents, if they think that the scene is not suitable for the audience. Now, I'm not saying that any of these scenes in this book are or are not suitable for any type of audiences because that is very much to each reader's own, because I cannot distinguish what is appropriate for a 13-year-old or not. I am not a parent, I am not a 13-year-old, and I can't say that I didn't read about sex when I was 13. I mean, when you're curious, you're gonna read about it. I'm not here to point fingers or point blame. I'm just saying that if this book was supposed to be released as new adult, it should have. Now that kind of goes into the second point that Francina makes, and that is that violence is more acceptable in books than sex. And sex is very natural. It is taboo for teens, which it happens, but it is so weird that the United States is very backwards. It is very easy for us to watch and read violence. It is very heavily portrayed in the media, but when it comes to sex, it is completely taboo. I come from Utah, and Utah is even more conservative, which goes into another point about whether schools or parents should teach sex education, relationships, and all of that. And this makes point 3. Whose responsibility is it to teach children proper sex education and also all of the intricate necessities of relationships and love, and what makes such relationships safe and consensual, whose responsibility is it to teach children sex education? And a lot of people say it does fall on the parents. The parents are responsible for sexual education and teaching proper relationships and showing children what is the difference between a safe relationship and an unsafe relationship. Now, do parents actually do that? That is a very controversial topic because, again, being from Utah, I got the maturation discussion talked about when I was very young. Sex was eliminated from that conversation, and anytime that sex topic came up with my parents, I was super uncomfortable, and I did not want to really talk about that stuff with them because I knew that I didn't want to engage in any sexual relationships until I was ready. Not every parent is open or even willing to talk about sex with their teenagers because they want to assume that that is not happening, that that's not going on. That is completely irrelevant and stupid, and in a sense that all good parents need to have this discussion. Because we can't fall on the school system to teach anything about safe sex or consensual sex when we have abstinence-only programs. Utah is huge in abstinence-only education, and that doesn't teach you any fundamental necessities that you need to know for sex education. And I am definitely one to spout that I think abstinence-only education doesn't work. It fails every single state in the US because they have the highest teen pregnancy rates, the highest STI rates, and so many abusive domestic violence cases. We need to have these discussions, and the fact that we don't is really crazy and ridiculous, and I honestly don't understand why we can't have these discussions. And if you have sex and don't want to get pregnant, don't want to contract STIs, you need to have those types of discussions. But again, parents aren't always comfortable having this discussion. Sometimes parents aren't even good parents and they don't talk to their children, let alone take care of them. So in a sense, we need to have a balance of education and parent involvement in these discussions. Now, as for sex in YA, which is the hugest, craziest, hardest thing to talk about because YA encompasses 13 to 18-year-olds, and that's just who they market to. Anybody can pick up a YA book. Should we have sex in there? You know, I'm not at liberty to decide what an author puts in there, and if they want to put sex in their books, I feel personally that they need to have some type of discussion about what this sexual relationship means. Because sex isn't just about sex most of the time, especially in YA. It all ties into a traumatic event or a strong relationship with another character. And so just throwing it in there without some type of discussion, it doesn't really make sense because usually when two characters have sex in YA, the girls do not get pregnant, do not have STIs. There's no STIs in YA because it is a fictional world and that usually doesn't come up. However, that also says safe sex, like condoms and other types of protection, are also not talked about. And not having these conversations is very destructive to teens because if they are taking their education from these fictional books, which I know they shouldn't, some of them do, and they will learn the wrong messages, that they can have sex without protection and they don't have to worry. One of my good friends is a teacher, and she dealt a lot with teens who were in a special program because of sexual assault or any type of delinquency. And so her opinions are a little biased, she does state, but she says that a lot of students, they do learn unhealthy relationships from the books they are reading. And they have unhealthy perceptions about love and sex based on these books. And so her opinion is that there should not be any sex in YA, and if there is, it needs to be the barest minimum of introduction and description, which is a huge consensus with a lot of my other friends and family members, is that it really needs to be very brief, not very descriptive. I think that it could be descriptive if it is in a healthy way where there is some type of discussion before or afterwards. And so I won't make any judgment call about what is right or wrong to be put in a story, because it's a story. It is an account of this fictional character's lives and what they learn. And which brings up the last point in Francina's discussion, is that books aren't supposed to really teach you anything. We don't need Hansel and Gretel telling us to not go into a stranger's home, or Red Riding Hood telling us to not speak to strangers. We don't need that anymore because we learn that already through literature that we already have, or from our parents and them teaching us. So fictional books, they don't necessarily have to have a set teaching, a set moral that we need to learn. Now, we do learn from books because we see subjectively what a character is going through, and how we learn from that is very subjective. We will not learn the same thing that another person reading the same words learns, because it is subjective. And I will say that it is subjective. Everybody takes a different part of a book and learns from it differently. And that is the beauty of reading a book, is learning different things from it. Even when you reread a book, you learn different things. You might love a character the first time and then hate them the second time. You can take anything from a character, whether you like them or you don't like them, whether you think that they are good or bad. This is all subjective, and characters have the ability to change, and that's why we enjoy reading stories, is we want to see how they change, how they grow, how they learn, and make decisions that shape their lives. That is the point of stories, is to see what happens to a character, see how we relate to them, see what we can learn from them, because we don't want to make the same stupid mistakes that they make. And all of these topics that she brings up in her video is phenomenal and fantastic. It is 20 minutes of hilarity. It brings up so many amazing points, and if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend you watch it and tell me your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Should there be sex in YA? And what does that mean? Does a sex scene mean a brief, almost no description, like a black curtain? Or does it mean completely descriptive, like comparable to adult erotica? What is the balance here? Is there a balance? Because one of my friends stated, if you give an author leeway, if you give a publishing company any leeway, they will take and take and take and do as much as they can to get whatever they can. There's just so much to talk about with this discussion, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!